and welcome to the Happya Life podcast. I'm Clare Deacon, and today I want to talk about something that surprises a lot of women in the empty nest stage. When I say surprises, but if I'm honest, for many it's more like a quiet, slightly mortifying puzzle. They expected that when the children left, when the daily intensity of the parenting years eased, they would naturally start to prioritize themselves. They'd have the time, they'd have the space, they'd finally be able to ask what they want and have the room to do something about that answer. And then the space arrived, and they're still putting themselves last. Not because someone is asking them to, not because there's a pressing reason, just because somewhere in the years of intensive caregiving, putting yourself last became automatic. It became the default, and defaults don't change just because the reason for them has gone. This surprises you, it frustrates you, and it can make you feel quietly that something must be wrong with you, that you're not using this stage well, that you should be able to just somehow start choosing yourself. I want to talk about why it's not that simple and what it actually takes to make the shift. The specific feeling I want to describe is a kind of self abandonment that's become so familiar, it's almost invisible. It's the reflective yes before the question has even kind of finished. The automatic rearranging of your own plans when someone else's needs appear. The inability to sit with unstructured time without filling it with something useful for someone else, and the guilt. That slightly irrational but very persistent guilt that arrives when you spend time on something that is genuinely just for you. Some describe it as not being able to rest without a reason. They can justify time for themselves if they're ill or exhausted past the point of functioning, but time that's just time, unproductive, self indulgent time, feels impossible, like a luxury they haven't earned, like something they'd need to explain to someone, even when there's no one to explain to. And there's often a quiet grief underneath all of that, not just grief for the children leaving, although that's there, grief for themselves, for the version of them that got deferred for so many years, for the needs that were set aside so many times, that setting them aside started to feel like the only available option. If any of that landed somewhere real, stay with that moment rather than pushing past it, because the landing is the signal. That's what needs your attention. Putting yourself last isn't a personality trait, it's a learned behavior. And specifically, it's a learned behavior that was reinforced consistently, probably for a decade or more. During the intensive parenting years, self deferral works. It's what the situation frequently requires. The system that develops, the one that puts others first automatically, the one that monitors needs and responds before they're even expressed, that system is functional. It served you and your family well, but your nervous system doesn't distinguish between a behavior learned for practical reasons and one you've consciously chosen. It knows this is what we do, and it keeps doing it because that's what the neural pathways do. They repeat. And there's another layer. Over the years of putting yourself last, your sense of your own needs may have just genuinely dimmed, not disappeared, but gone quieter, less frequently asked about, less confident that the answer matters, less connected to what you'd actually do with the answer if you had one. So, when the space arrives and it genuinely is yours, there are two things working against it: the automatic deferral of habit and the dimming of the inner signal about what you actually want. Both of those are real, both of them are addressable. They're not addressable simply by deciding to do things differently. There's something underneath the habit that's worth naming. For a lot of women, being needed, being the reliable one, being the person around whom others people's well-being organized itself wasn't just a role. Over time, it became an identity. It was how you understood your own value, what made you feel purposeful and connected. And when the children leave, you don't just lose the structure, you lose the identity that was built around it. Being needed is no longer the daily organizing principle. And if being needed was a significant part of how you understood who you are, the empty nest doesn't just feel quiet, it can feel like a loss of self. Putting yourself last, even when there's no longer a pressing reason to, can become a way of maintaining that familiar sense of self. Still useful, still in service, still the person whose own needs come second, because that's who you know how to be. Understanding this is important because you can't change a pattern you think is just a habit when it's actually an identity question. The two require different kinds of attention. Let me tell you what I see when women do this work properly, because I want you to know what's actually possible, not just what to do differently. The first shift is often the softest, but perhaps the most significant. It's the moment of recognizing your own needs didn't disappear during the parenting years, but that they were deferred. And deferred needs don't go away, they wait. The empty nest stage is, in some ways, them surfacing and asking quietly but clearly, is it now? The answer when you're ready to give it is yes, not because you've earned it or completed everything else, but because you're a person and your needs are a legitimate part of the picture, full stop. The second shift is the slow rebuilding of an inner signal that may have gone quiet over the years. Learning to ask yourself with genuine curiosity rather than immediately editing toward the practical, what you actually want. And then beginning to treat that answer as worth acting on. The women who make this shift describe it gradually becoming more natural. The automatic yes starts to pause before it arrives. The guilt that used to accompany time spent on themselves starts to soften. They begin to say no to things with a quiet certainty rather than elaborate explanation of justification. And many of them describe something specific, something I find genuinely moving. The morning they wake up and their first thought is entirely about themselves and what they want to do that day and what they're looking forward to. Not about what needs to be managed or what someone else needs. Just what is this day for me? That moment is small, and yet it's everything. If you're in the emptiness stage and you're still finding yourself in the background of your own life, I want to say clearly that it's not a failure of character, it's a deeply ingrained pattern, requires understanding to change, not simply a decision. You spent years being very good at taking care of other people. Doesn't go to waste. It becomes something different, something that includes genuinely you. If you want to explore this further, have a cuppa and a chat, free conversation with me. You can find out more and book at happya.co.uk. I'll be back next Wednesday. Until then, take care of yourself this week, not for anyone else, for you.